Okay, ladies and gentlemen, man, it is so good to see all of y'all. I'm going to ask our three honorees if you would come to the stage and take your seats, as well as Moses Boyd, if you would come and take your seat, and Renee Carter, if you would come and take your seat. Okay, if we can get General Drake to come, and General Drake, so good to see you. I think they've all realized I'm from the country, so you know, in the South, there's no telling what's coming out of your mouth. Thank you so much. So before We have already begun live streaming the exhibits that you see on the monitors, so our guests who are watching us from home or wherever they're watching us from, they're able to see the exhibits of our honorees. But before we recognize and begin the panel discussion, Maria, who is a member of Asbury, she's going to make a presentation that was unannounced and a surprise.
Good afternoon, Asbury family and friends, and all who have come out to celebrate with us with these special honorees. The church, family, and committee would like to honor each spouse with these beautiful bouquet of flowers. We couldn't leave them out because they are hard workers beside their counterparts. And we thank you for all of your services that you have rendered. And in this special Black History Month, we really greatly honor you and thank you deeply. So I would like to present the first one to Dr. Callender's family for the spouse. Miss Beautiful Jackie Richardson. And to Dr. Reuben Drake, on behalf of her husband, Brian's nephew. Thank you, and have an enjoyable time.
Good afternoon, Asbury and friends. My name is Renee Carter. Thank you for joining us for the first of two Black History Month conversations featuring Asburyans who have made outstanding contributions to our church, community, and indeed the nation. We are so proud to recognize our own. Just so you know what to expect, our conversation with these three trailblazers will last an hour, 1 hour. We know you want to get home to prepare for the Super Bowl. Let me emphasize that this will be a conversation, not a presentation, and technically not a panel discussion. My co-host and I will introduce, who I will introduce shortly, and I have prepared a few questions. Each honoree will not be expected to answer or respond to each question. We envision a conversation that will allow us to hear from and learn from each of them. We want to hear their hopes and dreams, their life's experiences. We will allow time for questions from those of you who are blessed to be with us here in this room, and for those of us who are joining us today via live stream. So now, let me introduce our co-host. As excited as I am to have the opportunity to hear from and learn from three of our 2024 Black History Month honorees, I'm equally encouraged and just downright proud to introduce our co-host, Moses Boyd. Moses grew up here at Asbury. He is homegrown, if you will. He is the son of Paula and Moses Boyd. Moses, Daddy, raise your hand. He is the older brother of Daniel. Moses is a senior at Yorktown High School in Alexandria, where he is student body president and a member of the track team. Moses also plays on a local rec center basketball team. He has a game this afternoon, so we're going to make sure he gets out of here on time for his game. Moses has earned the distinction of being an Eagle Scout. In case you don't know, Eagle Scout is the highest rank attainable in the Boy Scouts of America. Only 4% of Scouts have earned this rank. This busy and talented young man also enjoys spending time with his friends and listening to and playing music. He plays the piano and the clarinet. Moses will graduate in June. He will attend Brown University as a pre-med student, majoring in human biology. Moses Boyd is the future. One of these days, not too very long from now, he will be sitting here where these honorees today are sitting. And some young whippersnapper, just like him, will be asking him questions. Please join me in applauding Moses, who's going to briefly introduce our honorees and ask our first question this afternoon.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this afternoon. It is with the utmost honor and appreciation that I have the pleasure of introducing Brigadier General Audrey C. Drake, Dr. Clive O. Callender, and Mr. Cardell K. Richardson, Sr. My first question starts with, there is a universal saying, it takes a village. Who or what was part of your village, and how have they supported you to become who you are today? Or any.
Ladies first.
Sure, I'll be glad to.
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Is it on? Okay, can you hear me now? First of all, I'd be remiss if I didn't take the opportunity to thank everyone for this incredible recognition. I'm humbled that my family, my Asbury family, and you are my family, would be so kind to think about even considering me as one of the Trailblazers. So thank you for that. And I will tell you, it does absolutely take a village. And you're seeing part of my village. I was born and raised in this church. I represent 5 generations of Asburyans. My grandparents, my parents, my siblings, my kids, and now my grandkids. And I will tell you, during my 26-year military career, when I spent most of that time out of this area, whenever I came back, there were 2 things I could always 100% rely on being the same. That was my family and Asbury United Methodist Church, which, as I mentioned, is my family. It does take a village, and that's not lost on me. And you call us Trailblazers, but I really feel like I feel like I stand on the shoulders of all the ancestors that came before us. My parents really, they represented fairly meager means. We had everything that we needed growing up, and we didn't have everything that we always wanted. But we were taught, we were given a foundation of spirituality, and we were taught this incredible work ethic, and there was an underlying emphasis on education. And with those three you can do most anything. And I think if I have a legacy to pass on, I do. It would be those 3 things: trust in God, work hard and do your best. And there is no substitute for good education, because ignorance is bliss, actually is said. And so Can you still hear me? Can you hear me now? So that's why it's so important. That's why education is so important. And I'll pass the mic because I have a whole dispense of things I want to talk to you about. Oh.
It's on. Well, like my good friend Cardell, my family, my parents, and my siblings, and sadly, I am the lone survivor of my siblings. But I had my church family at home, and some of you will know I grew up in rural North Carolina with, as all of you know, black church and family were very prominent. And my parents and my parents' friends all encouraged me as I went away to school, and they supported me. And I have a family here, Asbury Church family, and a military family who still support me.
Yeah, I've been blessed to have a wife for 56 years. And some believe that she needs to be angelicized for staying together with me for 56 years. She would argue that I was only there 25 years, but I was there for 56 years. And so I owe deep gratitude to her for what she's done for me and the 3 children that have resulted as a consequence. And my twin brother, who I'm 30 minutes younger than, and 2 churches, Ebenezer Gospel Tabernacle and Asbury United Methodist Church. They've been the village and what have helped me become who I am today. To God be the glory.
And I'd just like to add that my husband, Audrey Drake, who is not here, was a great supporter and sacrificed a lot while I was in the military, especially when I was deployed during Delta Storm. So thanks to him too.
Okay. So I'm going to kind of flip and ask a question that's not historical, not too serious, okay? Tell us 2 things about yourself that we don't know beyond what everybody has read or heard already today.
I'll start.
Okay.
Well, my good friend Mr. Brown gave away one of my secrets, and that is that I am a night owl. I stay up late to get things done after everybody else goes to bed. But the other thing is, most of you would not know that basically I am an introvert, and I have had to work hard. That I am an introvert, and I have worked hard to change that in order to be successful in the many career roles that I was involved in.
And that's helpful. Tell us how you work to, overcome that. I'm sure a lot of people have things that they are working to overcome. So what did you do?
Well, I started to get more involved in joining groups because rather than do a group study, a group project when I was in grad school, I chose to write a thesis alone so I could write in the middle of the night while everybody else was asleep. But I started to join groups and make myself available to people when I could. If people needed help or they wanted to seek information, I would try to provide it. I did not let the staff monitor my phones when I was at work. If someone called, I would take the call to see how I could be helpful and reach out to me.
Okay. 2 things, Dr. Callender.
Yeah, well, I guess one thing is that my whole medical career actually began as a consequence of my church putting together a program to raise funds for me to go to medical school. And myself and my twin brother made a CD to try and pay them back. And in 2001, we made a CD and raised $15,000 for my church to pay them back for the. Kind of like MOTEP, but it's Ministry in Action, and it's a group that takes young people, gives them scholarships, and do athletic activities, and so in many ways it's the a corollary to what I did with MOTEP that my twin brother's done. Thank you for asking that question.
So, two things that you probably don't know about me. I routinely, if James Brown was the hardest working man in the world, I was the longest working person in the world. Since I was 11 years old, there hasn't been a year that's gone by that I've not had a job. And so I started out very early serving papers with my brothers, serving papers all around Washington, D.C. We had routes of our own, but then we became route captains, which means when some kid decides they no longer want to serve paper, they'd rather go play kickball, well, someone's got to get the papers squared away, and that was what we did. That was one. And then two, just opposite of General Drake, I am a very early bird, and generally roll out every morning about 3 a.m. So, and it's a full schedule, but I'm a very early bird. You can get a lot of stuff done, and it hasn't always been the case, but I remember, as a matter of fact, when I was in college, I used to always look for classes that were afternoon, which was hard to do because I was taking ROTC, and that starts early. But when I came into the military, I discovered this time of day called AM. It's a lot of stuff you can do early in the morning, so. Yeah.
Wow. My next question, looking back on how far you've all come in your journey, if you could go back to the beginning of your journey and give your former self one piece of advice, what would it be?
Need to learn to be more patient. As I've grown older, I've become more patient, but I'm still way behind in terms of patience. My wife would tell you that in spades, but anyway, that's what I would be more patient.
I think the advice I would give myself going back in time is I've learned as I've grown and matured, I've learned an incredible sense of confidence. And I would go back and tell my younger self, just be confident. Do your best. And your best is always good enough. It always is, because it's, your best. And just be confident in that. And something else I learned about confidence is confidence really is the key to success. But the key to confidence is preparation. And young people are preparing all the time. And I would say just do your best in preparing and be confident that you can, and go out and do it and succeed.
I think I would tell myself maybe to get to bed a little earlier. When I was working, I stopped sending emails at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning because my colleague would say, Audrey, what were you doing up at that? What were you doing up at that time of night? So I would tell myself maybe I should reverse that and get to bed a little earlier so I would not dread getting up in the AM for the military, which was quite a challenge for me, except I did end up having to take an 8 o'clock class when I was in college. So I would get up and get to that lab, and the instructor would get there and say to me, Crenshaw, get off the stool. I'm here now.
Thank you. What would you each say is your most significant accomplishment? If you had to point to one thing you've done over the life of your career, what is it that makes you feel best about what you've done, about your career?
I would say that, as I look at hallmarks of my life, I remember one night that I operated all night doing a transplant. And the next morning, I had to give my life story at a church. And I think that was probably the hallmark of my life, to be used to the honor and glory of God, to be able to do a transplant and then to tell my life story to church. So nothing beats that for me.
I think my most significant contribution would be mentoring. I have mentored people in the military, throughout the Veterans Administration, and was even instrumental in establishing a mentorship program for nurse executives in the VA, which people still call me and thank me and send me notes for the mentoring I provided and how I supported them in that role.
The next generation.
Yes.
Significant accomplishments. I would say without a doubt, it would definitely be college graduation, going to college. I'm first generation college educated in my family. And what I learned is between college graduation and getting a commission in the United States Air Force as an Air Force officer, two major accomplishments, because they opened a world of opportunities as a result. And it's given me several platforms as I've matriculated through my career, but then all around the world and in various organizations has given me a platform to represent to represent in a positive way on so many elements. Routinely, when I talk to any organization, I always make sure they know that God is first in my life. And so it gives me an opportunity, a platform to advocate for spirituality. And people always watch you, whether you know it or not. And it gives me an opportunity to represent in a certain way, I believe. Because I remember once we lived in Wichita, Texas, in Wichita, Kansas, I'm sorry, and we attended St. Mark's, a United Methodist Church. There was a minister there, a Reverend Tyrone Gordon. Who said that? Tyrone Gordon. Yeah, Tyrone Gordon, you know him. And he said, I'll never forget it, he said, sometimes you will be the only Bible someone will ever read. And that resonated with me, and so it's not lost on me that in those forums that I have to represent a certain way. But it is, the reason I have that platform is because of my matriculating through college and through my career to give me that platform.
All right, thank you. My next question is, an idol is someone that you look up to or that you seek empowerment from, whether it be that one third grade teacher or Barack Obama. Who was your idol?
Well, there's a Dr. Cardell at Hunter College who took me on when I was, I had a 1.9 average as a freshman in Hunter College. And nobody thought I would ever be a doctor. But Dr. Cardell got me interested in physiology. And I got nothing but A's in physiology and the rest of my medical career. What she did for me made an enormous difference in my life. Although one thing that I regret, I've never thanked her, but she was the one who really made the difference for my whole career.
Can I comment on that? I was just mouthing that nobody believes you got a 1.9 in anything because, because you're such a stalwart in what you do now. But I think what you've really just emphasized is really how important it is, how we encourage, how we inspire people with what we do and what we say. Maya Angelou said, I may not remember what you did or what you said, but I'll never forget how you made me feel. And so obviously this person made you feel in such a way that you could do anything. And so I just wanted to emphasize that because just listening to you say that, something I will certainly take to heart, and I will always remember that. And I would encourage us all to remember that.
Well, I went back in history a little bit, and one of the persons I really admired was Mary McLeod Bethune for all the hard work that she did, the organizations that she was a part of. Her relationship with First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt put her into a lot of positions where she was not only the only woman, but the only African American involved. And she also was on the advisory board for President Roosevelt that established the Army Women's Corps. And she made sure that was integrated. And that was before the Army was integrated, because it wasn't integrated to. President Truman did that by executive order. So.
In your lifetimes, or in your experiences, work and social, I'm sure you have experienced prejudice, some uncomfortable situations. I don't want to be Debbie Downer today, but I'd love to hear perhaps some experience that you had dealing with addressing prejudice in your career. I think the gift of this is in how you overcame. So tell us an example, or give us an example of some experience of prejudice that you had in your career and what you did to overcome.
So I'll go. When I was new to the military, I think I may have been a first lieutenant, and we lived in southern Illinois, Belleville, Illinois, about 20 miles east of St. Louis, Missouri, but it's in southern Illinois. And this was in the late 70s. And Jackie and I were moving from one place to the other, and we were looking for housing, looking for an apartment. And we called this place, and the real estate folks were very excited about us coming because we were, I guess they couldn't really tell on the phone that we were black. And so we called, and we immediately went to the location, which was maybe 12 minutes away. And when we got there, we were greeted with this interesting look on their face, and they unfortunately had to tell us, don't you know, someone's already been here, and we've rented the apartment. So it was intuitive to us what happened, but what we did was considered the source, considered the environment, but then also considered our options, and we recovered from it. But the point is that happens, and not all the time, because quite frankly, our experience by and large has been extremely favorable. It's been extremely favorable. So that's why I said you consider the source. But it taught me something, and we didn't let it dissuade us, and it certainly didn't, we didn't miss one beat, to be perfectly honest. But it taught me something that I already knew, because, and quite frankly, my organization was a mixed organization. Actually, as a Air Force officer, I was routinely in organization where I was the sole minority, but it was not uncommon that many of those people in that organization really was under my charge. But this is what I learned. This is what I taught myself. I told myself. One, when you go into a room, don't discriminate against anybody, including yourself. And so when I see those kinds of things, I consider the source if I'm in a position where I can correct it. And anywhere that any area I'm responsible for, it doesn't exist. If it does, and I find out about it, changes are made rapidly. In the military, it's interesting because the culture there had changed during the Truman era, because in the military you can command behavior, right? You can command behavior, and once you command behavior, attitudes change, and once attitudes change, the culture change. And so I like to help people with their behavior, if I ever see that, to change attitudes, to ensure that the culture that I'm in is one that we can all live and thrive in. But those are my
Well, I think discrimination and prejudice was a little bit harder to define in some of my roles. I was passed over once for promotion to colonel when I was fully qualified, but I was promoted the next round, but which gets me to an interesting situation. There was a rule that once you were promoted to colonel over at the DC Armory, you got parked in the garage. So when I went out to ask my parking permit to park in the garage, the permits told me no, I could not have a permit, because if he gave me one, he was going to have to give Colonel White, who had been promoted the year before, a parking permit. So I said, well, I'm not sure what you're going to do about Colonel White, but you're going to give me a parking permit. And I only went to one person above that person, and he was told to give me my parking permit. And consequently, she got one too, but she never asked.
I was among the first African-American transplant surgeons, and so I recognized that whenever I spoke up, which was often, that a white person would have to support me, otherwise they wouldn't pay any attention to me. But that did not stop me, so I persisted, and over time I was able to revolutionize discrimination in transplantation. So the moral of the story is we have a voice and we have to use it, and not take no for an answer.
So we're going to wrap up our time as panelists, but I'd like to have my co-host ask the last question before we open the floor up for questions from our audience, both here in the fellowship hall and online.
All right. My last question is, we now live in the age of the internet and social media. Information can now be shared across the world in the blink of an eye. What is one piece of advice that you would give youth to take advantage of this opportunity to change the world for the better?
I would just say that as a clinician, we have to protect patient confidentiality at all costs. And so I think it's imperative that in our field that whatever else we do, we have to protect patient confidentiality. That's the law. And if you violate it, you pay. Whether you wind up going to jail or when you wind up paying a fortune. But so patient confidentiality has to be maintained regardless of the internet associations.
Advice for our young doctor here.
Yes. Well, I would say that if you really have a goal that you would like to accomplish, that work hard at that goal. There may be some obstacles that get into your way, but work hard at whatever it is you would like to do. Find a mentor or role model to assist you in getting there.
The question is the internet, how do you use it in a positive way, or one piece of advice? I would say this is be cognizant of the fact that with technology, the internet, and with emails, you know, once you convey something and hit the button, or if you say something, or if you are recorded and you put it on the internet, you will never get it back. It belongs to everyone, including someone that I don't know, you may be interviewing with, and so it's difficult to present yourself or have yourself represented in one way when there's a different you out there on the internet. So just be cognizant of that is what I would say, but in a positive way, in a positive vein, which is I think was also the question. I would say it's not lost on me that the internet is an incredible platform for espousing positivity and for messaging, and be deliberate about that. Use it, leverage it like a tool is what I would say, and be deliberate about the messaging that you're putting out there. And I just predict that we're going to have more opportunities to do exactly that. And some have figured that out. They've used it for nefarious reasons. But I think it really can be used for positivity, but we need to be deliberate about it.
So I see Henry. He's like the man at the Apollo Theater with the long hook and everything. So I'm just saying, yeah, Sandman. I'm just saying, so we're going to have some questions from those of you in the audience right now.
I hope this is on.
Okay. First of all, I want to thank you for sharing so many things. I'm 75 years old, but even now I can be inspired by people like you. You know, each one of you have had such distinguished careers, which, as I said, inspire. I bet, though, that at some point in your life, you had a failure. You had a failure that tested you. And I would be very interested in knowing whether, first of all, that's true, and if it is true, what was it, and how did you overcome?
I'd like to start off because I've had so many failures. You know, Edison said he's failed to success. And for example, one of my biggest jobs was I work at Howard University Hospital. And one of the problems with Howard University Hospital is that black people tend not to love themselves. And they take that out on whoever they encounter. And so my mission was to have customer delight to be the main thing and the main theme at Howard University Hospital. And I worked on that mission for at least 10 years without success to this date. But the point is that I've had many failures. And so the real lesson, as you're pointing out, is the real hero is the person who, after every success, does not lose his or her enthusiasm, but continues to go on, and does not let failure stop them. Failure has not stopped me. I've had many successes, but twice as many failures.
And so, like like the doctor, I've had tons of micro failures, and but I'm pretty optimistic about it. I just like to just go ahead and get them out the way. And to your point, in Thomas Edison, he is someone who inspires. I think he went through like 1,000 experiments to come up with the filament in the light bulb. He started out with a paper filament. Didn't work. But my point really is, I think the real test is how you recover from a failure. As I said, my position is just do your best, and the best has got to be good enough. You just may have to keep doing it over and over and over again until you recognize something that you would then consider a success.
Right.
And before you go, General Drake, I want to say that for those of you who are watching online via live stream, if you have questions, you should put them in the chat. We'd be happy to have your questions, but please put them in the chat, and someone will pick them up and share them with our panelists.
And I would just like to support what they're saying. I guess I've had failures and had some rough times at work and at study, but you don't let that stop you. You get up, and there's always a new day. You get up and start over tomorrow.
Is there a question from online? If not, I'd love to hear from someone in the audience if there is another question from our audience.
If you have a question, would you please announce who you are as well? Thank you.
Hi, I'm Cassidy Carpenter. Something I always think about, especially during Black History Month when I get to see some of my Black leaders, is what did the diversity look like as you were coming up, and how did that affect your path and your career?
So as I mentioned, I started my career in the Air Force back in the mid-'70s. And going into the Air Force as an Air Force officer, there were multiple assignments where, certainly being in civil engineering, where I was the absolute only one there. Over the course of my career, that changed. I remember when I first came in the military, seeing a black colonel, and certainly in my career field in civil engineering was equally unusual. By the time I got to the Pentagon for the third time, as a colonel, there must have been 10 of us or more. My point really is there have been some substantive changes. And, I was reading an article a few days ago, and it talked about blacks going to college back around the time that I was going. This was between 66 and 77 was the period for the article. And it showed that blacks were on average going to college, I think it was like 250, actually 82,000 in 66. By 77, that number was north of 1 million. That's a big deal. My point really is you'd have to assume that that's why the demographic started to change. It also talked about how many what percent of those blacks were getting educated historically black colleges and university. And it was about 18%. That dropped off precipitously by 2010 to about 9%. And you may think that that's not a good news story. I'm telling you it is, and here's why. Because what that tells me is now blacks are more integrated in all those other schools as well. And so you can elect to go to Howard or a better school, Harvard, to Harvard or to a better school, Howard is what I meant to say. Or you could, that's my alma mater, as you probably figured out. Or you could elect to go to Morehouse or MIT. But blacks now are not just are not in single dimension, or you don't just see them in certain areas. It's expanded quite a bit. And I think that is a really good news story.
I want to say one thing about my colleague here. When he was a colonel, he was also the commander of Bolin Air Force Base, the entire base, which is now Joint Base Acacia. And I always felt better going over there when I knew he was in charge.
Thank you. And we have a question from online, from a viewer online.
Okay, it's on. From Heights, Columbia, the question for Dr. Callender is, you made so many strides with MOTEP. How did you decide to tackle such a big goal of increasing black organ and tissue donations?
Very interesting question, but it goes back to the fact that when I was 15, I contracted tuberculosis. I was in the hospital for 18 months and had a lobectomy. And so at that time, there was no cure for tuberculosis. I say that to say that my whole life has been a story of overcoming obstacles, and obstacles are the stair steps to success. And so as I finished career and trying to become the medical missionary I always wanted to be, and I lost 50 pounds, I decided that Africa was not the place for me. And so that I decided I'd go into transplantation. But as I came back and started the transplant program at Howard University Hospital, it became obvious that 90% of the donors were black and probably less than 3%. 90% of donors were white, probably less than 3% were black. And so this seemed an impossible dream. But since my life had been nothing but impossible dream anyway, I decided this is something that I would tackle. And lo and behold, I didn't expect it to be a success. I just knew that this was something that I needed to do. And lo and behold, 20 years later, the number of minorities who donate doubled, and the number of African Americans who donated tripled. So that's the short story of why I decided to take on that impossible dream. Because there is no impossible dream, there is no unreachable star. If you believe in God and believe in yourself.
And I think we have another question from our audience.
Hi, I'm Carol Travis. I had the wonderful privilege of knowing the mothers of Cardell, the mothers of Audrey, the mothers of Henry Kennedy, and the mother-in-law of Fern Marshall Callender. And I'd like to know what thing your mother said to you that you remember each and every day.
Interesting. My mother died when I was born. But I guess it would have to be my Aunt Ella, who raised me, who just never said there was anything that I could feel in, and that I should always be positive.
And my mother always told me to study hard, and I always did that, and I not involved in official studies, but I still like to learn, read, and try to learn something every day. Yeah.
So, Carol, thanks for the question, because I was going to squeeze in something about my mother if I had to force fit it. So thanks for giving me an opportunity to Yeah, my mother was by far the most influential person in my life in growing up. Most of you know, Carol, and those who've known us for a long time know that my dad passed when I was 11. And in my household, we didn't miss a beat because of Mom. But I will tell you, she had unshakable faith and was really grounded in God. And my brothers would tell you that one year it snowed, I don't know, it must have been maybe 3 feet deep. And we looked outside, we couldn't even see our front fence. And we said to Mom, this was on a Sunday, are we going to church? She says, you absolutely are. And so we left out, we went and caught the bus, and we got down here, and only the sexton was in the church. This was during Reverend Foy's time. And we had a telephone right out here, 11th Street entrance, where you could call, and we called Mom to let her know nobody's here, no one's here at church, and so we're coming home. Only the phone rang off the hook. So we decided we were going to leave. As we started out the church to walk across the street, she was coming across the street to church. The point is, she made it really clear to us the importance of going to church. My brothers and I, we were altar boys. They call them acolytes now, and we did that virtually every Sunday. Sometimes twice on Sunday, because we had 8:30 and an 11 o'clock service. But my point is, and that behavior developed the attitude in my mind and a culture about going to church. And so as no matter where I am, whether I'm on a temporary duty assignment out of town or around the world, or if I'm on a permanent change of duty assignment, what I really mean, no matter where I am, I would always find a church to go to. And so to answer your question, I think the thing that she said was trusting God. She trusted in God quite a bit, as you can imagine. A lot of times we come home and she was on her knees. And that's, I'll tell you one last thing. I have, before I spit this in there too, I have some incredible kids. And people want to know, how did you and Jackie do so well in raising your kids so incredibly well? And I tell them, come and get close, I'll tell you. You spend a lot of time on your knees. and I learned that from my mom. And I know my kids are the same way with my grandkids, and that, so I really do have some not just incredible, but incredible and adorable grandkids. I had to force fit that in.
So this has been really wonderful. Thank you. You've been a great audience. I know that there are questions. I hear this, but we're going to close. The last voice we will hear will be Reverend Mills. And so at this time, I'd like for Reverend Mills to come forward and close things out. I'm so sorry. I know that there are other questions. Well, Reverend Mills is going to defer to a young man, I think.
My name is Derek Arledge, Jr., and I had a question did you ever question anything in your life that you did, and what did you question?
Amen. Good question.
I question everything in my life, and I question everything every day. And sometimes I make mistakes, and sometimes I correct those mistakes. And I think that the one thing I've learned in life is, as he had already said, is be your best. Your best is good enough. I know my son would say that I deviated from that when we were bowling, and I told him that his best wasn't good enough. But that was only because I didn't feel he was giving his best. But for God, your best is good enough. You just have to really give it your best shot every time. As a doctor, when I lose patients, when I save patients, I recognize who's in control. And I think that's one of the most important things, to know who's in control.
Anybody else?
I concur with Dr. Callender, and that is, you're going to, his name is Derek, I call him Buddy. But buddy, you know, you're going to find out in life, you get an opportunity to question a lot of things. You should. You absolutely should. The world is your oyster. You're going to be offered a lot of opportunities, a lot of options. And you ought to question, why pick the one behind door number 3 until you know what's behind door number 1 and number 2? So you ought to, you know, I had one of my mentors once told me, he says, Cardell, he said, the moment you make a decision, you cut off all your options. The point was not to procrastinate or to equivocate, but you need to very deliberately consider the options. So you're going to have a lot of questions. I question everything, and then I make an informed decision. That's my advice to you.
Thank you. So I said we were going to call on Reverend Mills, and we will. But before we end today's conversation, I want to say that the theme of this year's Black History Month celebration, established by the Association for the Life and Study of African American History, is Black Americans in the Arts. Who's your favorite artist? That's not all. They were like all jumping. So.
Oh, well, my favorite artist is Stevie Wonder. I love his music, and I can always relax by enjoying it.
My favorite artist, of course, is Johnny Mathis.
So Stevie Wonder was on my list, but I've got a few. But I think the one that I find myself quoting the most is Maya Angelou.
Yes. She was
And so, but I have a ton. Stevie Wonder's definitely one, but I'd say Maya Angelou.
Thanks to my co-hosts, thanks to these incredible Asburyans, and thank you. Reverend Mills.
And you've already stolen my thunder by thanking everybody, so I don't need to do that again. But it's been a great day, and hearing your stories again has been wonderful. I always learn something new about you when you talk, when we have these kinds of experiences. So thank you for sharing yourselves. What we haven't done is thank Henry. This has been the labor of love of Henry Brown. We would not have had this without Henry Brown. So I am going to do a closing prayer. Actually, my opening prayer is being turned into a closing prayer. Just ordinary people. God uses ordinary people. He chooses people just like me and you, who are willing to do as he commands. God uses people that will give him all, no matter how small your all may seem to you, because little becomes much as you place it in the Master's hand. Gracious and loving God, during this Black History Month, we remember the struggles of our people, Black people, people of African descent, your people, and we thank you for your grace, your love, and your mercy. Lord God, we remember the hurts of exclusion and prejudice, but we know that you can raise our vision above all barriers and give us wisdom and courage to make this a better day. We remember that you use ordinary people for your purposes. We thank you for the leaders that you continue to place in high places and ordinary places. Today, we have recognized 3 such leaders. We thank you for the contributions of Audrey Drake, Clive Callender, and Cardell Richardson. We thank you for their faith that grounds them and their faithfulness to you. Inspire in each of us a mind, and a will to work more faithfully for justice and dignity of life everywhere. As we continue this celebration, this day, this week, this month, we remember, or may we remember, that all that we have and all that we are and all that we do is to and for your glory. Amen.
My pleasure. Like the both of you. And I think God bless you. God bless you. You're one of those students as well. So glad you're very